How did five friends go from a side hustle in college to now owning and operating hundreds of franchise locations across the US? In this episode, I sit down with founding partner Al and Navin of CMG Companies, operators of over 600 plus units across some of our favorite brands like KFC, Taco Bell, and Sonic. In this episode, we unpack some of the strategies that they use to build this powerhouse team by betting on each other, embracing turnarounds, and playing the long game. Al, Navin, welcome to the show. How are you guys doing today?
Good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Absolutely. This is a very exciting conversation that we're going to dive into. We are missing, I think, four other folks from outside of the house. And Navin, you are coming in and you're the advisor for CMG. Is that right?
Well, I actually became just full-time a partner a couple of years ago. And so I basically joined the tribe, so to speak, and just heavily leaned in and just trying to keep up with everyone else. But yeah, I mean, the business really started with a few gentlemen, Al being one of them. And, maybe we could start by just sharing that story with you.
Absolutely. Al, you want to take us away and tell us a little bit about CMG? Where did you guys start and where are you now?
Yeah. So Al Bhakta, CMG Companies, one of the founding partners. Really, the story goes back to very much a friendship. So, most of us, either met in high school or college. Some of us have sort of known each other all of our lives. So, myself and Nick are our first cousins. So, we're about 9 months apart in age. So we've sort of known each other all of our lives. And Manish and Bushbuck actually met in high school here in Dallas, in a city called Garland. And, they've sort of were friends in high school and then still remain friends today. And then Ron, we met, myself and Nick sort of met in college. I think Ron at the time was last year of high school when we actually met him. And then he went to University of Texas, Dallas. So we all met each other in and around college in the late 90s. And that's sort of where the friendship sort of began. And then some of the wives were friends and people started getting married, et cetera. And then the sort of the friendship circle got bigger, but really started as friends in the beginning. And while we were in college, some of us actually started some businesses together, so, very much entrepreneurs. We Navin likes to always say that, none of us sort of started on third base. So we were all hustling.
Yeah.
I always say there's no such word as a side hustle, but we had a lot of them going while we were in school. And most of us put ourselves through school and it was just a, good time. You had nothing to lose and you were young and all you could do was give up time and you could take risks. And so we were fortunate enough to start a couple of small businesses while we were in college and, sort of post college, that led to sort of formally getting into the multi-unit franchise space. So again, prior to that, even Pushbuck, he was an operator in Blimpies and Manish was an investor with him in that. And he was a franchisee in Afina gas stations. Everybody dabbled in something, but formally sort of post college, 2001, we got approved to be a franchisee in a small brand called Genghis Grill here in Dallas. At the time, it was a 2-unit concept, and we became one of the original franchisees of the concept. How we sort of got introduced to the brand was while we were in college in the late 90s there, we were a customer. We went there late in the evenings, had beers there and loved the cuisine and the style of cooking. And it was very unique at the time to us.
It was, yes.
We left a comment card saying, hey, if you guys ever franchise, Nick actually filled it out. And surprised they read his handwriting, but he filled it out saying, if you guys ever franchise, give us a call. And a couple years later, they gave us a call saying, hey, we just launched our franchise program. And that's when we became one of the original franchisees. So we sold we had a pool hall and a game room while we were in college and sort of kept those businesses post college. We all went on to our respective careers. Manish and Bushbuck were a few years older, so they were sort of well into their careers. And we started our first one. First, we always tell everybody the first day we opened up for dinner, from 4:00 to 10 o'clock at night. Not a single customer walked in the door. And, we're a bunch of young
That's
guys.
brutal.
We have SBA loan, personal guarantees on the leases.
Yeah.
We sort of did the pass the hat kind of money. So, anybody who would give us a little bit of money, we put up our money. But then again, at the end of the day, it was everything we had, we risked it on that first store. And we looked at ourselves that evening and said, what the heck did we get ourselves into? We got that first store we all worked it nights and weekends. We kept our day jobs. And so very much we worked every position, worked every hat. It was myself, Nick, and Ron on that first store. But at the end of the day, we learned how to be entrepreneurs, but more so just learned the hospitality business and what it took. We got that store to break even after probably about 15, 16 months in, and then started making a little bit of money. And then we're like, okay, and nothing to sort of sing home to mom about, but at the end of the day, we felt like, okay, maybe we're starting to climb out of this thing.
Got a little momentum.
And then we had an opportunity to actually buy a corporate store at towards the end of 2003. We had a chance at one of the corporate stores, and that store was doing double the volume we were in terms of revenue, and it wasn't making any money. It was losing about $100,000 a year.
Wow.
We basically said, oh, if we can make a little bit of money with half the revenue, we can do some wonders. And it turned out that was that first store that we were a customer of that we left that comment card at. It was sort of a full 360. We came back and ended up buying that store. And the way we did that was we sort of went out and raised friends and family capital. We didn't have the capacity to go get another loan, et cetera. So we basically did a deal. And that's where Manish and Bushbuck invested with us. Dr. Sanjay, who sits on our board and a partner, he invested and sort of early believers, really just close family and friends that invested with us on that second store. And that first quarter after we bought it, we made $64,000. We distributed $64,000 to the investors.
Amazing.
After one quarter. Yeah. And so that catapulted us to the next level. And then not too long thereafter, we got the opportunity to end up actually buying the brand. So we had a deal working with the third store with another franchisee that was looking to sell. So we had that. And then we basically had the opportunity to become the franchisor, and we basically took it. It was more of at that time, we would have had 3 stores and our livelihoods all on the line. And the brand was going through some struggles. It was an emerging brand and had a lot of franchisees that had opened up and shut down or were struggling. And so we realized, okay, if we can just buy the brand and have royalty free stores and we can build a few more and just in Dallas, Fort Worth, we'd be happy. And we ended up raising capital from sort of the same group of friends and family, added a few more to buy the brand and became the franchisor. So sort of went from cook to the C-suite pretty quickly. But again, the brand was small. It was 6 stores, 3 of which we owned, and then 3 franchise stores at the time. That's really the initial journey through the Genghis Grill days. Sort of fast forward that a little bit is we started growing Genghis both from a corporate store standpoint, and we sort of fixed the brand. We lowered the unit cost to get a store built, improved the unit economics. We put in contracts for supply agreements, et cetera, things that weren't happening or the support level wasn't there. We improved that. And really the fundamentals was we increased the value proposition to the customer. And the store number 7 that we opened was a massive success. And franchisees started calling and saying, hey, we're interested in the brand. So while we were growing Genghis and we still kept opening up corporate stores while adding franchisees, Manish and Pushbuck approached us and said, hey, we want to do this too. Initially, they wanted to just franchise Genghis, on their own in DFW. We said, hey, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And then they looked for other opportunities. And that led to sort of Yum Brands. They initially wanted to do Taco Bell, and Taco Bell at the time wasn't allowing, at least in Dallas, Fort Worth, they weren't allowing new units by new franchisees. So they allowed us to do a KFC Taco Bell dual brand in
the
combo unit in a rural market at the time. Now it's no longer rural, so it got approved in 2008. And so we turned around and invested with Manish and Pushbuck just as friends like they did with us. And then we got approved in 2008, opened our first store in 2009. And then we had an opportunity in 2010 to buy some distressed, primarily KFC stores, some dual brand KFC Taco Bell stores in the Midwest, Joplin, Springfield area, that were sort of, if you think about 2010, what the world was going through, these KFCs were in trouble. They weren't paying royalties, and they were in trouble with their lender. And we basically, went from one store and bought 30 stores in one swoop. And the reason we got approved for that is that's sort of the initial start of Chalak Mitra CMG getting together, because then we basically combined forces at that point where we were growing Genghis. We're like, okay, let's become a full-fledged franchisee in this other brand together. And so we sort of pooled the resources at that point and bought those 30 stores in that brand. And Manisha Bushbuck moved out to the market in Springfield, Missouri for a while. And we turned it around, right? The store started paying royalties the first week we took over. And, the rest is a little bit of history. I mean, we're now 175 stores in KFC Taco Bell, but it started with just one store in 2009, that journey as well. So I'll stop there, but that's sort of the beginnings of how we all met, how we all got together, and the journey of how CMG sort of formed.
I just add a couple things to that because I know that you've got some aspiring franchisees or entrepreneurs. A couple of things that I think were super helpful in making this work. One is just luck, just having the ability to be in the right place at the right time. The KFC sort of growth really came out of distress in the market, and that just sort of opportunity came because of what was going on in the economy. Just when the core group of founders, Al and Nick and Ron and then Pushbuck and Manish, there was sort of this mastermind, right? Al mentioned that no one was born on third base, but they sort of had each other and ambition, and they knew that they weren't able to do everything on their own, particularly if they had to support their families and just work and do those things. But having that ability to sort of bet on each other made it easier to bet on themselves, if that makes sense. And so a lot of people who are out there trying to do it, sometimes just having like-minded individuals makes a massive difference.
I agree. Navin, what did you see in the gang that made you want to decide to join, and when did you meet them exactly on their journey?
Yeah, so for 20 years I was a partner at a company called Hilco, and I essentially led our restaurant practice. It was sort of a niche that I helped create, and Hilco is a very entrepreneurial organization, but because of its size and its growth, it's become a very large institution, and it's a special situations group. And so, I met Al and Ron in 2010. I remember it just because my son was born, and I met them shortly thereafter. I was on something called the Restaurant Leadership Advisory Council, and I met these guys. And when I first met them, they were much smaller than they are today, but they were full of energy. And I remember when they first met them, they were out there growing Genghis Grill, and they actually had sport coats on with the Genghis logo, and they were really representing, so much like how I was wearing the Sonic shirt, just really representing the brand. And they were looking for deals. They were looking for sites. And, I did a lot of distress work. And so the first thing I saw when I met them was just just felt the energy, right? I mean, obviously you could just look at both of us for similar age, of Indian background, and, just a lot of shared values as we started a friendship. And so it really started from there. And then over the years, as sort of I evolved in my career at Hilco, and these guys were building out CMG, we always stayed together. Our families became friends, and, it was really just based on that friendship. And then when I officially left Hilco in several years ago, I just started talking to them, and I said, there's perhaps some stuff we could do together, and I could try to add value based on my background and what I've done, and just the ability to work with people you love and just get to wake up and just sort of feel comfortable that you've got, a good team. And, what these guys have built is massive. So yeah, it was just, I think more my good fortune and just coming together at the right time.
Absolutely.
He was advising us for free for about 10 years before that. So he
pays off.
He sort of forgot to
He's
tell
thinking
you
the
that.
long term. He's thinking long-term game. Yes.
We were trying
you always try to help people out, right? Play the long game.
And for a long time, I think, it was a long dating, long engagement until we got him on board.
Yeah. As you were talking, one question comes to mind is like, it seems like there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, for lack of better words. You have 5 partners, right? And I'm sure there's other people within CMG that run the operation. How do you guys separate out the work, and how do you fill in each other's gaps? Like, what is that relationship like behind the scenes?
Yeah.
So well, go ahead, Al.
No, go ahead, Navin. Go ahead. I mean, you sort of know how it's evolved. So yeah.
Yeah. So, if you think of CMG companies, it's not like that's a legal entity. That's really just the name of a holding company, similar to like how you might have like the Green Bay Packers or
Right.
Capital. It's just a way sort of create an avatar of all the stuff that's behind the cupboard. But essentially today, the business has no outside investors in the sense that it's not a private equity group. We don't have your traditional LPs, even though we've evolved from sort of friends and family money when Genghis was just sort of coming out with Al and the group to sort of having some institutional investors over the years as we've looked at acquisitions and stuff. But today, just through recapitalizing businesses and stuff, we own 100% of the equity. But each business, and there's about 10 separate companies, each business is essentially a separate legal entity, separate balance sheet. And there's no way that a small group of people, even if they were all sort of Elon Musk or, whomever, certainly nothing close to that. The only way that we've been able to really scale and grow is through just human capital and bringing the right people on the bus. And so there's a little bit of a division of labor and responsibilities. The business is sort of at that inflection where it's close to 600 locations in about 80% of the country in over 40 states. But some of the founding partners are still heavily involved in the day-to-day of each business. And one of the partners, Ron, really manages all the back office, so all the stuff that goes on above the 4 walls of a unit, whether it's a retail or a restaurant. But, it's an evolutionary thing. But for the most part, we've got management teams that are focused day in and day out of each business. They wake up, they breathe, sleep, think about the business, and we're able to still stay involved in the business where we have a very strong pulse. In some cases, some of the partners are managing the day-to-day of a business. And so we figured out a way to really grow and scale based on a common shared values. And then there's a lot of commonalities between franchise brands. They all have typically a franchise agreement or a license agreement. They typically have sort of a market where you can develop. There's usually, depending on the size and the maturity, there's opportunities to acquire either corporate units or other franchisees. There's a pretty strong cohort of traditional banks that have franchise lending groups. There's a group of private credit lenders out there that like the franchise space based on its consistency. And so, a lot of the lenders that may look at one of our brands may also be lending in another concept that we're in. And so I think as we get to a certain scale, as anyone gets to a certain scale, first of all, you've made a lot of mistakes. And so you learn just by doing the reps, which vendors are good, which brands sort of have the ability to sort of withstand different economic cycles. And so over time, there's an iteration that you keep compounding and learning. And then, at a certain point you scale. But the most important thing, just to reiterate, is just having great people, but still staying heavily involved and having that entrepreneurial spirit. I don't know, Al, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, no, like you said, it's an iteration. I mean, we all learned where our strengths were over that time period and how we can work together. And we're buddies and we have some core principles and we sort of go at it sometimes, and we have a saying in Hindi called it in one of the languages we speak. It says "Raat gayi baat gayi," which means as the night goes, the talk goes. And so you just sort of shake it off, hug it out, and then you're back to being friends again and business partners. We don't usually talk about money, which has been a beautiful thing amongst the partners. And again, Navin's been part of it for a long time as well. And it's sort of the reason I think we've been able to make it work. But yeah, some of the guys have certain strengths and we all have our weaknesses. And so we just sort of help balance each other out. We try to act as each other's sort of blind spots and create guardrails for each other, right? Navin knows that Al may be a little too aggressive on going after a certain acquisition or something, and he'll rein me back. And So again, it's been a beautiful journey through that. Yes. So is there a lot of cooks in the kitchen? But again, we wouldn't have it. We wouldn't be here without all the cooks. And it's
Absolutely.
sort of special because we've been able to figure out a way to make it work for all these years.
Yeah, Dave, what I would say the analogy, instead of like too many cooks in the kitchen, it's sort of like a basketball team, right? Where we sort of play off of each other. Each person has their own unique kind of strengths, and not that we win every championship or we measure ourselves based on sort of those types of things, but we enjoy playing together. And over time, you sort of learn how to work well together, versus just being sort of out there singular, trying to be the king of the castle.
Absolutely. And that there's a lot of analogies there for our team, especially. We all play soccer together, and there's the striker and then there's the goalkeeper, and everyone just respects each other's position on the field and also in the company. And I'm very lucky that we all went to school together. Most of us were in the same fraternity, and three of us all live together. So from 9 a.m. until 11 o'clock, until we hit the hay, we're always like either fighting about something or debating or trying to give each other feedback to get better. We're in the lucky spot where if I had to take a bet on these people, I would rather work with them for the rest of my career than to go somewhere else, because I know that these guys are going to be super successful. So I think that's the message I want to drive home, is that in your journey, you guys have stuck along for the ride for so many years, and now it's paying dividends, as you can see.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think I forgot who it was a big VC investor, said that to figure out, the right group of the founders you want to bet on is that even if their first venture company fails, these guys would want to work together again on building another venture. Like, that's the type of founders you want to back. So that's pretty cool that you said that you would do this all over again, regardless of basically you guys have a product or a service, but at the end of the day, it's not that, it's the journey.
Yeah. I don't care if this company fails. On to the next one. What game are you guys playing? What game is CMG playing? Are you guys trying to become number one Mumbo out there? You guys want to buy some franchises yourself? What's the game you're playing?
Yeah, I mean, we've been a franchisor. We don't own Genghis, Grill anymore. We sold it several years ago, but we got into other brands as well, and we miserably failed at most of those. Being a brand owner again, and thinking we could repeat what we did with Genghis, but even with Genghis, we had a lot of tough treading. It's just hard to sort of be a franchisor or a brand owner, and if you don't have the capital or the scale to get big fast, there's just so much emerging concepts that just keep coming. So it's a pretty competitive space. And, we realize that we run a pretty good playbook. And as Navin said, some of these brands, whether it be food or retail or service-based brands, anything that has a franchise playbook or a dealership playbook or a co-op playbook, anything that has a brand on the building, we think we can run that playbook. So yeah, no, I mean, we're not looking, never say never, we may do it again, maybe, but, at the end of the day, I think we want to be a franchisee or run a playbook. So I'm going to, it could be a dealership model. It's a licensing model. We can own territories of a brand. So again, it doesn't even have to be brick and mortar, but we think we can run the playbook. We don't want to be the guys that design the playbook. And then I think in terms of just what we're playing is really a long ball game, right? Where we're really trying to play long ball in everything we think about. And we realize that when these businesses really need reinvestment, they need to be taken care of. They need to be nurtured. And it's not a business where we can buy it at X, turn it around and sell it for 3, 4, 5 times later. That's not the world we play in. So it's not very sexy when it comes to everything else that may be out there or that gets more publicized. But it's very rewarding. You get to take care of a lot of people along the way, and you get to build around great people. And so again, it's long ball. We're not looking to be number one in anything. We want to be best in class operator in all the brands we're in. We want to be a great brand partner to all the brands we're in. And as a result of that, I think opportunities have followed us, and keep doing the right things. It's sort of cliche, but honestly, like, we've had a lot of tough times. You just got to keep weathering the storm. And again, you have to look at this with a very long-term mindset. So, and I know Navin, one other thing, Navin did mention luck. I'm actually quite the opposite. I don't believe in luck. I believe in the fact that you put yourself in positions where then opportunity comes to you. And yeah, sure. 2010, people are running away from KFC. A lot of smart people, a lot of people, that, have a lot more degrees and much better schools that we went to. And at the end of the day, they ran away from these opportunities that we took on.
Hmm.
I look at that as, I'm quite the opposite of mindset when it comes to luck. I'm, as I put yourself in the right positions, and opportunities will come to you. And again, we
Interesting.
dive in when a lot of people have run away from opportunity.
No, that's fair. In terms of what the goal is, I mean, it's silly to sort of have a goal like 1,000 locations or, X dollars. Sometimes that helps just for financial reasons because you could,
Right.
potentially increase the surface area of what's possible. So we do have some of those, but it's nothing that we wake up and, like Al said, we don't really talk much about money amongst the partners. It's just keep doing the right things and make sure we don't do anything stupid, or if we do, make sure we correct ourselves. But I think probably the most important thing, at least something that we've talked about internally, is as we get bigger, we have a saying, we want to fill the boat. And so we're really, at the end of the day, like I've said several times, a people business. And so as the business gets bigger, there's opportunities for people to grow and scale and develop their careers. If we had just one location, there's sort of a local maximum. Like, what can you really do if you just work in one store? But when you have a few hundred, whether it's within the brand you're in or whether there's opportunities to do something else or move to a different brand, CMG companies is a pretty big family of, individuals. There's 10 plus thousand people that are under sort of our business. And so that's pretty exciting. Like there've been people who've been with the KFC business and Taco Bell since 2008. So that's 25 plus years. So creating those opportunities is exciting. As an example, we have someone who actually, even though we don't have Genghis anymore, he started out at Genghis. He's been with our business for over a dozen years. He sits at our holding company and he's heavily involved in a lot of the day-to-day M&A and stuff that we're doing. That makes us really exciting when you can actually sort of nurture and develop people and create opportunities. And like I said, just find ways to fill the boat.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. Thank you for telling your story. I think this was, as a young man, I think this is very inspiring to hear it coming from you guys. And for my audience, take a look at their website, see all the cool brands that they're a part of, and keep an eye out on CMG because I'm bullish on you guys. Thank you so much for joining. I appreciate
Thanks,
it.
man. Yeah, take care.